The presenting sponsor for OnEducation is Classcraft. We're so excited to announce Classcraft's new story mode, which makes it easy for educators to harness the power of stories. But that's not all. Have you ever wanted to see yourself as a character in a story? Now teachers and students can create their custom game avatars and see them come to life on an augmented reality poster. To learn more about Classcraft's story mode and the new AR experience, simply visit classcraft.com. Yeah, very impressive. Actually, no meltdowns from us either, so that was impressive too, especially from me. My wife is like a Vulcan, so she doesn't get up and down.
Welcome to OnEducation, part of the Education Podcast Network. I am Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glenn Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We will reflect on last week's shooting and how politicians and the media are blaming video games for the violence. We will discuss the Clear the List Back to School movement and its implications for educators, families, and legislators. And our amazing guest this week is educator Sarah Thomas.
You're back.
I am back.
Thank God.
It was a road trip.
Editing the podcast sucks.
It was an amazing road trip, and I'm glad to be home though. I mean, there's nothing like when you get to actually come home and you actually are sleeping in your own bed, and your kids have their own bedrooms. We're super blessed. That's all I could tell you. That's what my wife and I just kept saying. You know what?
Yeah.
That just it brings that back right into the forefront. It's like, man, the things that we have is just amazing. And the road trip was amazing, and our kids, they did phenomenal. I was like, it's got to be so brutal for kids. As far as traveling long hours,
families who don't travel well,
and then be able to, you hit all these different destinations, and you're doing all of these things, but then you get up the next day out of a hotel and you go and you travel again. And then I wanted to give a big shout out to the state of South Dakota, man. God, I swear I've driven through South Dakota, but really just central South Dakota.
Okay.
And it's kind of right through the capital. It was the path that we always used to take from Jamestown, North Dakota to Colorado, where my wife's parents were in Jamestown, North Dakota, but they also lived part of the year in Colorado. We did this road trip back and forth. And central South Dakota, just kind of like what you would imagine the Dakotas being, rolling hills and a lot of farmland.
Empty space.
A lot of farmland, a lot of, exactly, empty space. And my God, if you go to the southwestern side of South Dakota, it is one of the most beautiful places. It is on the same grade as Colorado. I have to put it right there. And it's a combination of the Badlands. As you enter the Badlands and they have a national park there, that is a ridiculous, amazing national park to be able to drive through and then to be able to go visit. And then right next to it, you have Mount Rushmore. And I didn't realize that Rapid City and Mount Rushmore, it's like the mountains. It feels like Colorado. And so we drove through there. We went to Mount Rushmore, and huge props out to Mount Rushmore. If you want to take your kids somewhere, take them to there. It costs $10 to park. It is free to go into, and it's an all-day kind of thing. You can go. There's food there, so you don't have to worry about that. It's just a beautiful place. Lots of things to visit. Lots of historical things. So
more than just a mountain with people's faces carved.
Yeah. You would think it would just be kind of boring, but my kids loved it, and they loved all of the different passages.
There they are. Okay, we can go now.
Yeah, exactly. No, you would think that that's what it was. But it was amazing, and my kids, that was definitely a highlight for them, and so was the Badlands. So I had to give a huge props to South Dakota, because usually I talked bad about you guys. I'm sorry, but I take it all back. You guys are.
I talk bad about you all the time.
You guys are that. What an amazing, beautiful state, and then we went, of course, to Colorado, because we love Colorado, and took our kids there, went to various different places there, and then ended up in Roswell, New Mexico. So
I was going to say, then you ended up in New Mexico. You went everywhere.
Yes.
You toured the freaking country.
We hit a lot of states. Let's just say that.
Pretty crazy. And your kids survived, and there was no meltdowns.
No
or
meltdowns.
anything.
That was weird.
Unreal.
That
That's
was awesome.
That's impressive.
Yeah, very impressive. Actually, no meltdowns from us either. So that was impressive too, especially from me. My wife is like a Vulcan, so she doesn't get up and down. But me, I'm like a volcano. So that was definitely impressive that nobody got really riled up. So that was great.
So a ringing endorsement of South Dakota.
South Dakota, man.
By
Tourism.
Glen Irvin. And everyone came back from the road trip alive.
Yes.
And apparently Mount Rushmore is freaking awesome.
Yes. And we did a Irvin family reunion. So it was my Irvin side of my family, and we had a concert.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious. It was awesome. It was super fun, and lots of family members and lots of people some people I haven't seen since I was a little kid. So that was pretty cool. You get to get back together and then take a picture. And then maybe, 20 years from now, my kids will see, some relatives that they hadn't seen, in 20 years or whatever.
In 20 years.
Yeah.
There you go. And then, so then you came home.
Yes.
And then you literally hopped in the car again.
Yes, and I went
to keynote.
Yes, I actually did there was a conference on the day right after I got back in a town called New Prague, and I just did a couple sessions there, and then the next day was the keynote and then some sessions in a different town, and it was awesome. It went really, really well. I think you've described this as far as right before you're going to do the keynotes, not the moment right before, but the day before. I was just like in pure panic mode.
Losing my mind.
Yeah. But then I had a sense of calmness right before I went on, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go and do that. And so many people had great advice for me, as far as the things go. And man, it went fantastic. People, it was very, very well received. There were several people who came to me afterwards and said that I made them cry. So I thought that was pretty good.
That's how you know. That's how you know you got a winner right there.
Exactly. Had some tears.
Got to play the emotions card.
Exactly.
In the public speaking. That's when you've hit it.
You've done something good.
We're gonna rip the audio from the video. Apparently you have a video, so we're gonna rip that and we're gonna put it out as an episode. I don't know if we'll tag it to a weekly episode or we'll put it out on its own. Yeah. It seems more likely we'll put it out on its own, but either way, it'll get out, and everyone else can be blessed with the stunning oratory of Glen Irvin.
Yeah, you can get to listen
just like the folks were at the conference.
Exactly.
So that'll be exciting. So transitioning to some pretty crappy stuff. God,
I know.
So that was the positive segment of On Education for this week.
Here comes the negative. Yes.
Now on
or the
to
sad.
the garbage. Yeah, it's been a pretty bad week, friends, and so if you listen to last week's episode of On Education, I did a little speech kind of before the episode, just kind of talking about my own personal thoughts, I guess, on what happened, because I felt obligated to say something and not just pretend like everything is normal, because none of what's going on around here is normal. And so I guess first, what are you probably have some thoughts on what happened in the last week, and it's pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's just horrible, and I have a lot of family. I was born in El Paso, so just so people know, and actually my family is based on the east side of El Paso. There's two parts, kind of. We call it two parts of El Paso. And the east side of El Paso, the biggest mall that you go to is the Cielo Vista Mall, which happens to be this location where this Walmart was actually at. And one of my friends from El Paso texted me that her mom and her sister, who I know very well, were in that Walmart, and it was while it was actually still in progress and happening. So we were all just devastated, and it was the day obviously the day of, and I think it was the day before we did our family reunion, or maybe it was the day of our family reunion. So it was just horrible news to hear. And we were just checking on everybody to make sure that, you check on your family and friends and see if everybody's okay, and you know that there was a lot of people that weren't okay because they were already talking about all the fatalities. And then Dayton obviously happened too. It's just like super tragic, and it happens just way too often. And I know that this is, as we come back to school, it's important for us to know that us as adults and our students are, this is right there. We all are feeling it when we're all kind of congregating in these places where shootings have happened. It's kind of a thought now. We are thinking about it with good reason. We're like, okay, I got to be conscious of where I'm at, of what's happening, and that's horrible that we have to think that way.
I think it goes without saying, well, maybe not the right choice of words, but don't doubt for a second, friends. If you're listening to this podcast and you're looking for teachers who you want to stay in their lane and not talk about this stuff, you're listening to the wrong podcast, because we're getting into a period of time where this stuff needs to be talked about more and more, not less and less.
Yeah.
And we can't you and I particularly, but and I'm in a Voxer group with other podcasters, and I straight up challenge them. You guys we have a responsibility to, you don't have to be a firebrand, jump on your soapbox and go crazy. But, if you don't think that this stuff impacts your students, you're crazy.
Yeah.
You're flat out wrong.
No, it does.
And so you need to wake the hell up a little bit and just acknowledge that, this stuff, being afraid of going to Walmart,
I know,
shouldn't be a reality in your life.
No.
And being afraid to go to school shouldn't be a reality of your life. But in some communities, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
And this is where these conversations need to happen. And so, that's why, and we're going to talk a little bit later about EduTwitter and stuff like that. But we've got to start talking about this and not being afraid to talk about it, because even though the conversations are hard and they're frustrating in some cases, and not all of us agree on the paths forward, we've got to start walking together in some ways and figuring out how as educators we can, use our skills and our power and our influence, because we have all of those things. Every one of us, not just Glenn and I and people with podcasts, or, not the Alice Keelers and the Matt Millers of the world either. We all have a voice in this, and we can all do our part to help, our countries and our citizenry figure out what's going on and how to cope with it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And transitioning, it doesn't help that you have a red herring in video games,
Yeah, let's get a little close to home here.
Or
right?
video game violence.
Jeez.
And that you're going to throw something like that out and say, well, here's the reason why. It kind of reminds me of the 1980s. I remember my parents were super scared of Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know if you were, I don't know if that happened in Canada, but it did happen in the United States, where they all thought that we were going to become devil worshippers. And I don't know if they had all watched specials on TV on 60 Minutes or something, of the media of that day. But that was for real, and people were crazy about that. Same thing with I don't know if you're a music guy too. Remember the people burning of the CDs of rap music, for example, and destroying all of that because they were saying that was to blame for X. You're trying to associate these things to something else where you're like, that has nothing to do with it, but it's an easy thing to throw out there. So video games or media in general, whatever it might be, movies or music, and how it will influence you to commit violence. It's just a gross take. And unfortunately it gets spread a lot, even though, it gets debunked a lot of people really do believe this in it, and it's sad because we know that it's not the truth, and actually research has shown that that's not the case. So blaming video games for violence, it's like we're right back at that, again.
I will say that it's been nice to see, so every time there's a big mass shooting, Vegas, Parkland, all of these big, especially the ones where Orlando, where they've been large, there's been this narrative, and then there's been very little pushback against it. There's been pushback by, some people, but not in any sort of quantity that gets a critical mass of response. Mm-hmm. And that's not been the same this time, which again is so relieving. Like for example, Hillary Clinton responds and she says, "You guys are dumb. Video games are everywhere. Mental illness is everywhere. They're not shooting people in other countries." That's been like that typical response that's been out there. And that's the right response. I mean, even I typed those words because the more people that say that, which seems like just normal logic to anyone who can think critically, seems to be, we need to shout that. Everyone needs to remind everyone that video games are in Canada, video games are in France, video games are in South Korea,
all over Asia. Yes, exactly.
There's that amazing Vox graph which is what I posted on Twitter by Vox. I might, maybe if I think about it, I'll put it in the show notes. That just basically shows on one side the video game per revenue by country, and South Korea is like way up there, like number one by a long shot, especially compared to the States. And then the violent shooting deaths on the other side, and it's like there's no causation there.
No, absolutely not.
It has absolutely nothing to do with anything else. And I've been so happy to see at least people are pushing back against it because it's absolutely ridiculous. Mm-hmm. The last thing we want to talk about this week that has gotten some attention is just, EduTwitter, our favorite topic. Well, one of our favorite topics, probably second to teachers pay teachers.
Exactly. And standardized testing.
So yeah, textbook companies.
Yes.
So there you go. It's in our top 5 anyways. So listen, I'm not gonna say that EduTwitter is getting toxic, but that's the question we're asking. Do you think EduTwitter is getting toxic?
I actually just saw some different things that people are different takes that people are having, right? Yes. One of the most passive aggressive things that people are doing, and if you do this, it's pretty weak sauce. I just have to call you out for this, is retweeting, right? This. You retweet with a comment, right?
Okay.
And then you make sure that, obviously, that if people don't understand that when you retweet with comment, the originator of that tweet doesn't actually see that unless you tag them in it, right? Because
doesn't see your retweet.
Doesn't see the retweet with comments. You know what I'm talking about, Mike? Yeah, and so what these people are doing is they get someone's statement of whatever it might be, and then they either mischaracterize that or just kind of like put up some kind of burn statement. It feels totally like teenage years where we used to talk about burning somebody, like,
sick burn,
yeah, oh my goodness, we just burned you, that kind of stuff. Totally feels like that is happening a lot, and with this kind of retweet with comment. And I'm like, if you're gonna say something to somebody, reply to them. And then, if you want to put specific hashtags to, let other people know, whatever it might be. Or if you do retweet with comment, put their name on there too, so that they know that you're doing that.
So they can have a chance to respond.
Obviously, too. And there can be disagreement. Obviously, we know that. There's a back and forth dialogue that happens on a variety of different topics because we don't all agree with everything that happens as far as that's happening on Twitter itself. But I just noticed some different, just some real, I think, kind of low shot, it's just, I'm just like, that's gross. And why do that, kind of thing. And then the only part that gets me there is you can do that, but I just don't want other people to, as they come into Twitter, to be to think that that's what this is about, because we know that there's just so much value there with connections to people, so many great things, and so many great people willing to do all kinds of stuff, help your classrooms, all kinds of things, help you share things, whatever it might be. I mean, there's just so many amazing positive situations, things that have occurred on Twitter with myself and with other people that I'm connected to. That's what I want to remember it as, and know it that I don't want people to get the bad taste. And so that's what I was wondering. And I've seen this kind of thread of, kind of this toxic talk, kind of back and forth, and discussion is great. But to be the whole kind of like low blow burn kind of thing. I don't know if you've seen the Edu Celebrity.
Yes, I'm glad you brought it.
Twitter account. And I think that, I mean, I'm going to assume that that's a total burn. Again, I'm using the same word. I'm using my 8th grade word here. This is what I used to use in 8th grade. A burn on Dave Burgess and the speakers that come from Dave Burgess. Let's just say like our guest that we've had, like George Kiros, for example, where you go around and you speak to different schools, and it's kind of like a parody. Now, some of the stuff is pretty dang funny on there, right? But it is kind of like this super passive aggressive kind of take on things, and kind of diminishing what happens at conferences, I think. Diminishing the role of Twitter as a tool to be able to use that, and kind of putting it down. Oh, and I don't know if you've heard this kind of talk where people say, "Oh, when Twitter started like 10 years ago, Twitter was awesome, and now it's just all these, edu personalities or whatever it might be." And I'm like, I don't think it's that at all. I think it's whoever you want to follow and whoever you connect it to. I don't think it's a total cult of personality. I'm not, everything that either George says or Alice Keeler says or whoever might be the biggest personalities out there. I don't follow every single one of those words. I'm looking at all kinds of other people when they say something inspiring or they share something. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's so good. I want to make sure that pass that along or whatever it might be, or connect to it, whatever. So yeah, it's this big thing. And I don't know, do you kind of following my long spiel there?
I get it. And I have mixed feelings about the Edu Celebrity, like the parody accounts.
Yes.
They are funny.
Yes.
Some of the tweets are hysterical.
They are.
And some of them hit a little true. Like there is some strands of truth and kind of, it's a little bit flexed. It's a little bit, off, not precise or whatever, but there's some legitimacy in some of it for sure. And I think it's worth acknowledging that. I think that just to even go back with a couple of your thoughts, there are definitely some bad actors, or at least. So I'm not gonna name names, but there are, there's been a couple folks who have had to have been called out on their behavior, not necessarily on their opinions, because in a lot of cases, the couple or 4 people who I'm thinking of, I agree with a lot of what they're saying. But when you say it in a way that is just, I don't know what even word I want to use, but they're just being jerks about it. And there's a way to do it where you don't have to be such a dick.
Yeah, I totally agree.
For lack of really better words, but that's, I mean, whatever. It's true. There's a way to say it where you can say it, and listen, we're going to get into it in a second. Be, passionate, be disagreeable, disagree, be in someone's face about a strong opinion. If you because a lot of what some of these folks are saying is 100% true. Yes. It's just the delivery has been crap. Yeah. And I know that there's a couple that are getting that after being pretty aggressively called out in the last week or so by we have friends in this fight, for sure. There was a huge thread with Michael Cohen that I DM'd him about after it was done, and was just like, I was following the whole thing. And there was another thread with Don Wettrick, who, it was very good. And they were like, it was super passionate. It was super respectful. But I mean, we need to, engage in meaningful discussion.
Yeah.
Even if it's discussion that we disagree with. There was this a post by a fellow Mr. Hill at MRHill34 is his hashtag on Twitter. We'll post the actual thing that he posted on our show notes. But he proposed a sort of charter of behavior, for lack of better words, for EduTwitter. And I didn't notice it until you put it in the show notes, but I actually did respond to it this evening, because I get it. I understand the idea and the desire, because I've felt it. I've felt not only like all that I thought about the last couple weeks prior to when a lot of this stuff hit the fan and people started calling these bad actors out on their kind of crappy behavior was, God, I hope he doesn't go after me. Like, serious. So I was like feeling it a little too, because some of these people that they're going after are our friends.
Yes.
Right. And it's very easy to lump other people. Like, we don't have super high profiles, but we have a podcast.
Well, it feels like, you know what, Mike? It feels like if you write, so you write a book.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you then have some ideas to share, like, let's go Michael Cohen. It's just I mean, if you ever meet this guy,
right,
he's the nicest human being that you've ever
like
met in your life. I mean, why would you ever say anything? And what he wants is, he's just super passionate about education and educating kids and just lifting up education. So you meet him in real life, and you have these people that publish these books, and they have these ideas, and they're speaking about these ideas, and the ideas are positive things. It's not like, a lot of it in the parody accounts is like, supposedly it's like mumbo jumbo. It's like, no, it's just really positive thoughts on their take on education. But now we're gonna, is it like a form of jealousy, or we're just like tired of?
Oh, I think there's some of that too.
Are we tired because you got a book published, and we're like, we don't want to listen to you, kind of thing? You know what I mean? We don't like that you have a platform to be able to speak. It's like, no, that's. If you ever meet, it's just like any of these topics that we talk about too, Mike. When you actually get to know somebody, God, like, and we've gotten to know a lot of people, and actually I can't even think of one person that I've actually now met in real life, and we've talked about this, where you meet him in real life, you're like, what an amazing, awesome person. And guess who we meet? We meet educators. And so when we start throwing the burns out there to each other, guess what we're doing? We're just burning all of us. So we're just bringing all of us down. It's bringing us all down a level. And that's not good. I mean, that's not going to benefit anybody,
No, it doesn't benefit anybody. And it's not good.
No.
So we'll post some stuff in the show notes. And you can make a decision for yourself.
Yes.
Maybe weigh in. Maybe we'll have a question on Chat on Education.
I totally think we should.
Let's talk about something that is good. So when we come back, school is back, or it's just about back in most of the U.S., and Canadian classrooms will be getting up pretty soon here. This year we've seen a massive spike in advocacy related to teachers not having the supplies and tools they want and need in their classrooms. We'll talk about heading back to school and about the Clear the List movement when we come back, so stay tuned.
OnEducation is brought to you by Pick My Kid. Pick My Kid is an automated dismissal solution that cuts car line time in half. It engages parents with the parent app by being able to change dismissal routines right from their phone. Friends, that means no more front office calls. Pick My Kid is affordable for schools and removes dismissal stress for parents, teachers, and staff. For more information, visit pickmykid.com. That's P-I-K, mykid.com.
All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. School is back. at least in a lot of the United States. And this year, I don't think I've ever seen this before. At least not
like
at
this.
least not even anywhere close to the way that it was this year. So this year, what happened was, obviously we know that there's massive budget issues in so many districts all over the country. We have some friends at a think tank called EdBuild. We've interviewed Zahava Stadler, who is the director of policy for EdBuild. We talked about school funding on the podcast, and they published reports, and we've shared a bunch of them, and you should go read them, and you should go to EdBuild and take a look at how bad this is. If you don't think it's a problem, it'll open your eyes. So we know that there's massive inequality. We know that there's massive inequality issues between school districts, and teachers have started to take the matter into their own hands. They've started to post Amazon wish lists. These are the things I need, and share them. And it just kind of went crazy. It blew up pretty aggressively, and so we have this hashtag, clear the lists. What's your initial thought on, just big picture, clear the lists?
Big picture, I am very happy that people are advocating for themselves, right? But it also makes me super depressed that that's what we have to do. So it's a combination of two things. Yep. People just saying, hey, I need these things. This is what I need for my classroom. Help me out if you can. And then there's the part where you're like, why aren't we funding this enough so that people are able to purchase the supplies that they need? I mean, some of the things that I saw, that's what I'm saying. I saw pencils, I saw crayons and some little notepads, little things. So I went out to all kinds of people's lists just because I kind of wanted to be like, say, okay, what kinds of things are people asking for? Man, and the thing is that, and what we all know is that we are all putting in our own money, obviously, to purchase most, if not all of these things. So this clear the list thing is only a tiny portion of what people end up going in and purchasing for themselves. It's just that you already make a limited amount of money, and now you have to put more of your own money into the purchases for your own classroom, which it shouldn't be that way, especially if we're talking about the things that are necessary to be able to just be good educators. Like you just said, writing utensils. We're not asking for extraordinary things. And so it's sad, pathetic, I think, that the legislators don't step up and make sure that these things are going to be provided. And in the previous school district that I worked in, we had a $100 supply budget for the year. So $100 is nothing. You could spend that a minuscule amount of things, so you don't end up being able to
30
do that.
minutes in a 30 minutes in a Staples.
So then what I ended up doing, and my wife, same thing, and your wife, obviously the same thing, and you're exactly the same thing. You go out and you're just like, here's the stuff that I need so that I can do the things that I want to be able to do in my classroom, and then you just went and bought those things, and that was $200, $300, $400, $500. We've heard people spending $1,000 out of their own pocket, purchasing things that they need for their classroom. Especially, I think this is disproportionate, and I may be wrong about this, but I think I'm right, at the elementary level. I think your elementary teachers are disproportionately spending they need it, just part of educating little kids.
Primary elementary kids.
Oh, it's
K to 3.
K to 3 even. Yes, I would totally agree with you. And so you have this burden that we're placing on people, and then they have to go ask. I'm happy that there's a platform to be able to do it, and what we are all trying to do is spread the message to hopefully somebody out there, a wonderful person that has money
Lots of
and
dough.
can go ahead and fund these things. That's really what we're trying to do, is hit like kind of the jackpot, the Ashton Kutcher jackpot. He funded all of these donors choose projects all in Iowa, like thousands of them, spent, I don't know, some ungodly amount of money and funded all of them that were based in Iowa because he's from there. And I know Ellen DeGeneres does that. And of course, Oprah, all these people give all kinds of things, and they fund all of these different things that are constantly. They don't need a movement like this. But we're hoping somebody just out there steps up. And then there's just people like me and you who've gone onto people's lists, and we just buy the thing for them. I'm like, I spent $10 on this person, and I spent another, $10, $15 on another person. I don't need anything for it. It's just like, if I know that one little thing, it could help, and it could help some classrooms, some students out there, and so willing to go ahead and do that too.
So I wrote a post on Twitter early when I started to see the hashtags, and it was just a Twitter post. And someone responded to that with their like a little bit of context and then their list, and I went on it. And one of the things, so then a couple days later, I wrote a blog post, and maybe we'll put that in the show notes. A bunch of people have read it, which is nice, and I think it spurred some people on to action, which is even better. I got some nice DMs and stuff like that. But what I did, and what I encourage everyone to do, even just a little bit, is go and look. You don't have to spend a lot of money, and you don't even have to don't feel pressure to buy just any old thing. So what I did is on this person's, and I thought this was super thoughtful. So if anyone's still got lists that they need cleared, and there's people just buying one-off things, you have the opportunity in an Amazon wish list to write a little bit of a description, like context for why you want this specific thing.
Yes.
Because even in my blog post, I said, that I saw some really dumb things on people's wish lists. Things that, my wife was looking through it, and my wife's, I trust my wife, especially in terms of like knowing what a K-3 teacher might actually need. And she's like, there's some stuff here that's a little, let's not go crazy, right?
Yes.
I don't want it to be perceived as an opportunity to take advantage of people's goodwill.
Yes.
So what I really appreciated was this one list that I went on after, in between the Twitter post and the blog post. She had wrote some descriptions, some context for why she needed certain things. And I was looking through them, and I was reading the descriptions because I really wanted to buy her something that, first off, I didn't have a ton of money to spare, but I had some. And I also wanted to do the most good possible with one or two things that I could possibly buy. And she wrote she needed a paper cutter, like one of those guillotine cutters.
Yes.
And she had wrote in the context in that little description box in her wish list that she works at a big school, like as far as like distance to walk across it, and her primary class is on one side of the school, and her office where this cutter is on the other side of the school.
Yes.
And she taught primary, and if you know anything about primary teachers, they're cutting paper for crafts and like doing like all of the stuff. That's why they buy a lot of stuff, is because it's all like crafts and handwork and all these things that they're making. And so she said that, for me to walk like to the other side of the school, it takes like 5 minutes, and then to cut all of my paper and then to walk back, like it was like a crazy amount of time in just like the normal course of the day, or it was consuming all her prep time if she piled it all up. And so I bought her the paper cutter.
Nice.
That seemed like the best use of my money and her getting a gift. And I really hope that was valuable for her. So, there's some lists that still need to be cleared.
Oh, absolutely.
I think we encourage some folks
thousands
to
and
go
thousands.
take a look.
Yes.
Not completely related to clear the list, but definitely related to back to school. We're really excited, and we've been tweeting about this a little bit, but this We're going to do a special OnEducation Presents. We're going to record it next week, I believe.
Yeah.
And we're having 3 folks. We know one of them personally. We've never met the other 2, but we're really excited to talk to all 3. Jonathan Pullium, Stephanie Vizcarra, and Susan, I think her last name is Jachymiak. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited to see if I got that right or not.
I think you did.
We're going to talk to those 3. They are all second-year teachers as of, this week
year.
Or next week, I guess.
Yeah.
So we would like to talk to them about their experience with being a first-year teacher, how it went, the good, the bad, the ugly, just whatever. I think we're gonna have some questions, but we're really hoping also that they talk to each other.
Yes.
And kind of share between the 3 of them their experiences being new teachers. And maybe we can, we have a lot of administrators that listen, a lot of superintendents, a lot of tech directors, a lot of people who are mentors. And we're hoping that their reflections of being a first-year teacher help these people who listen to our podcast become better leaders for them.
Absolutely. We need to just make sure that we have better policies in place, how we groom our new teachers into the entire teaching profession to make sure that they just don't survive the first year, that they thrive. And we are all part of the process. By we, I mean all of us that are involved in education. So whether it be like me, an instructional coach, or a fellow teacher, we need to lift these people up and then make sure that we help them out so that it helps all of us. It helps the entire profession and it helps all of our students. Why wouldn't you want to do that?
So stay tuned for that. Really excited.
Yes.
We've been talking about it for a couple months, pulled it together in the last couple weeks, and got everyone kind of on the same page, which is hard to do when there's 5 people that are going to be talking. It'll easily be the most people we've ever had on an episode at the same time. I have no idea if our system can handle it, we're going to find out. And we're really hoping that you listen to it and share it and enjoy it, because I'm really excited to talk to these 3. They seem like really awesome people, and probably there's some diversity here. There's all different parts of the country here. We got a little bit of everybody and everything, a lot of different perspectives, and that's super exciting as well. Speaking of exciting, when we come back, we'll be joined by our friend Sarah Thomas. So stay with us.
OnEducation is brought to you by Taylor Ed. As teachers, meeting the needs of each and every student in today's classroom is time-consuming, complicated, and overwhelming. Taylor Ed makes differentiation in math effortless through curated resources, smart student grouping, and student insights beyond proficiency. Sign up today using the promo code OnEducation and receive 3 months on us. Visit taylor-ed.com for more information.
All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. What seems like an eternity ago, Sarah Thomas was one of our first ever guests on OnEducation, and she's back for round 2. She's decided to grace us with her presence again. Thankfully, we weren't so bad the first time, I guess. So welcome to the podcast, Sarah.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. You guys are amazing. I'm so happy. I saw y'all like from the beginning and just everything y'all have built. This is amazing.
You were there at the beginning. Actually, you were one of the people that got to listen to that first episode.
Yes.
The infamous first episode.
Yeah. It's so exciting.
Boy. So let's take a minute and just tell everyone a little bit about who you are, what you do, where you're from, all of that stuff before we get started.
Sure. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Thomas. I'm a regional tech coordinator. I live in Virginia. I work in Maryland. And I work with a very large district. It's my 15th year that I will be starting shortly. And, let's see here. I've taught every grade from 1st to 12th. Currently, I work in central office and I work to help support, technology integration in the schools. I'm also an affiliate faculty, which is kind of like an adjunct professor at a local university. And, I'm also the founder/CEO of Jachymiak.
That is amazing. And Sarah, you're a very publicly reflective person. So we've actually ran into you all kinds of times at different conferences, but just kind of like mostly in passing while running to and from a session or a meeting. But we really haven't had a good chance to really chat. So we'd love to know just what you're thinking about these days regarding education, or what are you working on these days?
Oh my goodness. I would say that probably the thing that has driven me for the last 5 years and has taken over every facet of my life. No, I'm just joking. I'm making it sound a lot more dramatic than it is. But I'm extremely passionate about people telling their stories about, just being close to the situation, like as educators, how we are in the classroom or in the district or what have you. And we see, the successes, we see the challenges. We're in a perfect position to address them. Same thing with our students, even more importantly, our students. And they can move mountains with their power, collectively and individually, as we're seeing.
We talk a lot about stories too, and you're going to hear us talk a lot about more. We're kind of building some ideas centered around stories, because podcasting has a lot to do with telling stories as well. And when you started talking about that, I thought about Mandy specifically, yes, who you work with a lot, Mandy Froelich, who's been on the podcast, but is also another one of those super transparent educators in terms of like really talking about what's on her mind, what she's feeling, and not all of that's always positive necessarily, in the sense that this is what I'm struggling with right now. Mm-hmm. And what do you think about the idea that educators, maybe that speaks to the idea that educators appear to be vulnerable, appear to be, working through things and thinking about things in a really thoughtful, sometimes deep, and, even, in a manner that isn't always, bright, sunshine, happy, that kind of stuff.
Right. Because as much as we want life to be bright, sunshine, happy, then that's not always the reality. And it's important to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, all of it, just so that we can learn from one another, support one another through our challenges, and, just keep it real, keep it 100, because that's really the way that we get to the heart of the matter. Because if nobody wants to talk about, the bad stuff or the challenging, difficult stuff, then we're never going to move past it. And a lot of times the solution's like right there, like what may have worked for someone else might just be the fix to my problem. So we definitely have to open up and share. And I'll also say that, working with Mandy, I mean, her project blew me away. Like, I remember, when we first started talking about it, and this was before Jachymiak was even like really doing solo books. Like, we had not released a solo book yet. And, she showed me her project, and I read through it, and in chapter 1, I was hooked. I was just like, I have not seen anything like this. It's just been really an inspiration, to me. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So I want to ask about this specific thing that you've popped up in this OV Academy. So I've seen this come up a lot, especially lately in the last couple weeks, maybe couple months, and been fascinated with it, but I'll admit to not knowing a whole lot about what it is and what it's about, other than knowing that whoever's involved in it is really freaking enthusiastic about being there and being whatever it is that's going on. They're there for it. Like, it's awesome. So I'd love to know a little bit about OV Academy, and maybe you can explain it, because I'm sure that other people are seeing it on Twitter in particular as well, and wondering what is this?
Well, first and foremost, I have to give a shout out to Jachymiak. This is her baby, and she has just watered it, planted it, grown it, and it's become amazing. I mean, it was amazing from the beginning, and it just continues to grow. The family continues to grow. So really, I'm honored that Jenny has invited me back, several times to be one of the coaches for OV Academy. And OV Academy stands for Our Voice Academy. Because traditionally, when you look at conferences, many conferences, not every conference, but many conferences, then, you tend to, you tend to hear from the same folks or people who have similar messages or people who may look like one another. And, there's this whole segment of just marginalized people, specifically people of color who have not had access to those stages on a large scale. So what OV Academy does is that it helps to, it's kind of like 3 days of magic is the best way I can describe it. Where just, everyone who participates, there's just so much love there and just building one another up and supporting one another. And, a lot of times, people are navigating through, prior traumatic experiences in many cases. And just so that community, that family, that love, it's just a weekend of healing, as well as growing. So I'm just honored to be a part of it.
So let's talk a little bit about Jachymiak, and we're seeing lots of great things, especially on the book side. So what's been awesome with Jachymiak lately?
Oh, wow. So the publishing side has really taken off over the past year, I would say. Yeah. It's just been such a great journey. Just want to give some shout outs to, the Jachymiak publishing team. So we have Mandy, as y'all mentioned. She's the director of author success. We have Tatul, who's the acquisitions editor. We have Martine, who is the managing editor. Alyssa is a children's book consultant. We have Melody, who is the logistics manager. I really feel like I'm leaving someone out, so I feel horrible. I mean, it's just an amazing community. And shout out also to all of our authors and content creators, because now we have evolved. So in addition to books, we also include long form documentaries. So Dr. Will, the edupreneur, that was our very first one. And we're also looking into short form documentaries, short form videos, not necessarily documentaries, but short form videos. And in addition, Tanikia Pope is, she is our first curriculum creator. So she created a curriculum that's especially for like after school programs and summer camps and things of that nature called Mass Seal. And it's pretty dope as well. So I'm just inspired to be around, this community of creatives that are just, passionate about getting their message out. So it's been a really cool ride.
Yeah, you're running a company. You are still working in a school district. How are you keeping it all together, Sarah?
Oh, it's all about teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. If it were just for me, then we would absolutely, hands down, not be anywhere near where we are right now. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we still have a long way to go, and we're working towards growing and scaling rapidly. But it's all about the team. Like, just everything that people bring to the table. It's amazing.
And the growth has been incredible. I couldn't help but notice. I mean, Brian's book specifically has like absolutely exploded, and I mean, isn't that's been pretty special to see? Oh,
thank you. Yeah. They. Oh my goodness. Like the content creators are so passionate about their work. Like, I mean, this is people's stories. So getting it out there, and even the fictional books, the children's books, we're seeing a lot more of those as well. And I mean, these are stories inside of us, bursting to get out. Yeah. So it's that, that drive is just incredible to see.
Awesome. Sarah, where can people connect with you online to learn more about you? Where can people go to learn a little more about Jachymiak and see all the great things you got going on there?
Yeah, so for Jachymiak, it's probably the easiest place to start. Jachymiak.org is kind of like the hub. From there, you can find out more about Jachymiak. You can sign up. There's information about our podcast, etc. And it also links to our publishing page. It links to our, I want to say from our publishing page, we link to our podcast network, as well as our very soon we're going to have our nonprofit like in hard launch. We're in soft launch right now. So we have funding and we are getting ready to disseminate some mini grants. So
awesome.
So super excited for that. So that's coming very soon. So website is under construction, but we have the infrastructure. We are ready to rock. So hopefully it'll drop this month.
Can you tell us more about that? Because I think our audience would be very interested in that, especially, I mean, are they education related or what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so they are for educators. So anyone who is working with a school or district, and unfortunately right now it's limited to the United States because this is our first go round. But we are looking to expand it and have it available, internationally, hopefully in the near future. But pretty much the point of the grants is to support grassroots movements by students, by educators. And it comes through the educator, but the educator can sponsor, their students if they have an idea because, we're seeing with Generation Z now, the sky is the limit in terms of, what they can and will do. So we want to support that. We want to support educators, in their grassroots movements and ideas and things of that nature. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. Love that.
And as far as me personally, the best way to reach me is on Voxer. And my handle is @SarahTheTeacher, but I'm also on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all those different places. I just don't check them every day.
Nice.
Okay.
Sarah Thomas, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to On Education. My name is Glenn Irvin. My co-host is Mike Washburn. On Education is part of the Education Podcast Network. You can listen to this show and many others by great educators like Jennifer Gonzalez, Matt Miller, and many more by visiting edupodcastnetwork.com. Want to get in touch with us? Check out our website at oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Mike is at Mr. Washburn on Twitter, and I can be found at Irv Spanish. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. We're also on Instagram at oneducationpod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we would be thrilled if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or the Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost. This helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Classcraft, for supporting us. Check out classcraft.com/oneducation to learn more about them. Thanks as always for listening, stay awesome, and see you soon.